In this video, I will make an instrument in MSoundFactory, one that properly implements everything that's needed to make it work well and be compatible with other instruments for the best user experience. I'll also describe the optimal workflow and point out the potential issues on the way. Please make sure you're familiar with MSoundFactory and using multiparameters to create user interfaces first. In the video description, there's a link to the document describing all the stuff you need to know and some handy resources, so please check it out. First, a few words about MSoundFactory. When you open it, there are global presets on top, which are supposed to be used mainly for simple presets without any GUI and for saving your own work. Then there are the instruments, categorized on the left. The supersaw is the reference instrument, so to speak. It has a well-done GUI and everything has been implemented as it should be. Notice an instrument can have its own presets. So there are currently two preset buttons under each other, global presets and instrument presets, which only store settings for that particular instrument, and we'll be talking about that later. Now switch to the edit screen. Globals tab contains the global envelope, volume, pitch, and other basic settings. The generator tab contains the per voice modular generator. For every voice the instrument plays, the whole structure is created independently. You can use two types of modulations here. First, the global modulators you know from other plugins, and which control all voices at the same time. And the per voice modulation unique to MSoundFactory's generator tab, which works on per voice basis, and it's likely you'll be mostly using this one. You can access it using the modulation buttons next to all parameters, which can be modulated. The generator produces 6 output lanes. MSoundFactory mixes separately each lane for each voice and sends them to the FX tab, which contains another modular unit, which is therefore processed just once for the mix of all voices. The lanes are still separated though. Let's start making my new instrument. First, open Global Preset from folder Sound Design Templates named Main Template. Checking the easy screen, it already contains all 3 tabs that are recommended: the Generator, Effects, and Globals. There's also a preset Minimal Template, which only contains the Globals tab, and you may find it handy from time to time. The idea is that for most cases, all instruments should look similar so that they're easy to learn for the users. In the main template, there's really not much on the easy screen generator tab, only glide, harmony, and envelope settings, which is sort of typical for synthesizers. I can remove them if I don't need them. Effects tab contains a full range of effects and it is included to make the design easy. I can again remove anything I don't need later. The Globals tab is also already defined, and here we shouldn't remove anything unless there's a good reason to. If all instruments have the same stuff in this tab, they'll be easier to use, and users can lock settings related to their MIDI controllers, for example, so that browsing instruments is more natural. Back to the edit screen. The FX tab is fully defined, featuring all the effects available from the easy screen. And there's pretty much nothing on the generator tab, except for some effects, which are being intentionally processed per voice. The generator tab is the place to start. I'm going to make a simple wobbling bass instrument. First, I'll insert wavetable 40 because I'm not sure how many waves I'll need. I'm going to load some wavetable from folder wobble. And just play a little, moving the wave parameter. Cool, I like this one, and since it only uses 8 waves, I'll be fine with wavetable 8, just optimizing it a bit, so I'll copy the wavetable 40 settings and paste them into wavetable 8. I'll attach the wave to an LFO by drag and dropping the LFO 1 onto its modulation button. Now I increase the modulation depth all the way up. Nice wobbling already. Before I'll continue, I want to save my work. So I'll use the global presets, create a new folder, and save it as 1. Versioning is always a good idea when doing some serious work. I'll also add a filter and modulate its frequency using envelope 1. Modulation all the way up again since I want the sound to open fully. I click on the envelope 1 button to get its settings, since it is too fast, and increase the attack to about a second and sustain to maximum, so that we can hear the filter working. Save as version 2. As I said, I'm going to make a simple instrument for demonstration purposes. So let's just say I'm already happy with this sound. Next step is to make it MPE compliant. What is MPE? That's the new generation of 3D controllers, such as Linstrument or Seaboard, where each key doesn't only respond to velocity, but also pressure, and can be dragged both horizontally, producing pitch bend, and vertically, producing timbre MIDI controller. Pitch bend is handled automatically, so nothing to do there, but pressure and timbre could use some handling. I'm going to control the filter frequency with pressure. Since it is already being controlled using LFO, I'm going to multiply it with pressure, and since I want the sound to be more open when pressed harder, but also want to support MIDI controllers, which do not provide pressure, I'm going to use Aftertouch and Pressure Def 1 source. Now timbre, how about LFO rate? 5 Hz center rate sounds good. Now just attach the timbre controller and set the modulation depth to, say, 10%. Let me play a bit for you. Good. The sound works nicely for a quick example and supports MPE. Save it as version 3. Time for the GUI. First, finish the globals where the MPE settings are. The only controllers that need to be implemented are Use Timbre and Use Pressure, which control how much the controllers do. Enable Learn for the Use Pressure multiparameter, right-click and Clear and Learn. Open modulation settings for filter frequency and learn the depth of the pressure full range. Check if it works. Done. Same thing for Use Timbre, but attach it to the rate modulation. Check. And done. Save as version 4. Globals are done. Now the main generator tab. The hardest part of the GUI design awaits. The GUI should be powerful enough for tweaking this particular sound, but easy to understand and not scientific. The parameters should be structured and named so that everyone immediately understands your instrument, as opposed to stuff like Oscillator 1 custom shape, which would require knowledge of how the instrument actually works. My instrument is very simple and I need to be quick, so you don't need to watch this video for an hour. First, let's check what we already have in the Generator tab. Glide is definitely useful. Harmony as well. Envelope is useful too, but the tremolo really isn't, since it sort of fights the wobbling. So let's remove tremolo. Hold Ctrl and Alt and right-click on it, choose Reset. Same for tremolo rate. Now back to the edit screen and figure out some cool parameters for my instrument. I'm going to attach multi-parameters to various controls, starting with multiparameter 1. I usually like to use the delimited blocks of 8 multiparameters to individual groups, since it makes it easy to organize. I'll also immediately set the value mode, default value, origin, and potentially editor mode. I can change it later, but this will speed up my workflow. First, wavetable. Minimal wave value sounds useful. Multiparameter 1. Name it, say, minimum, and set group to wobbling, since we'll probably have more parameters related to wobbling. Another obvious one is depth of the modulation. Save version 5. Unison is useful too. We'll include an enable switch, number of voices, and detune. I'm placing it to a multi-parameter block 9 to 16, as I explained before. Make a group called Unison for them. Enable should be a switch, and the editor mode set to Enable Title button. Don't forget defaults as usual. I'll limit the number of voices to 8. It doesn't seem to make much difference above 8. Next, transformation definitely sounds like it has a potential. Start with async, which often works nicely. So let's have another block, multiparameter 17 to control the depth from 0% to, say, 20%. Higher values seem too much for my taste. Default to 0%, of course. And let's call the group Monster because I feel like it. How about other transformations? Perhaps we can find a few and make a selector for it. Multiparameter 18, Banks mode. I simply try various transformations, and if I like one, I save it to a new bank. Since I want to be quick, I'm only going to use those transformations which produce unchanged signal with 0%, so everything is easier. I could also name them creatively, but for time's sake, I'm just going to use menu, set names by values, disable interpolation, set by bank name units, and selector editor mode. We are getting very close to already used multiparameters for glide. So let's just move them down in the multiparameter manager. Note that we must not change the locations of multiparameters for globals, but we can move the generator stuff without problem. Let's check the filter. Drive could definitely be useful. Panorama produces some nice width. Frequency as well. And since it's modulated, range could be useful too. Perhaps a little selection of filters like I did for transformation. I'm setting the gain to +8 decibels so that some filters can use it. Since we already have 3 filter-related parameters, a new group seems logical. Multiparameter Manager makes it quick and simple. Distortion and width are also made using a filter, but from the user's point of view, these parameters change the sound somehow, not necessarily by filtering, so I'll create a new group called character for them. I didn't check any potential modulation parameters yet, so let's see. Envelope 1 is used for the filter frequency. The attack is definitely worth controlling and fits the character group, so let's name it rise time. Next, LFO1, which drives the wobbling. Rate and shape seem like obvious choices and fit the first group called wobbling. Okay, I think we have enough parameters for my instrument. All of them do something useful and have parameter ranges that only produce reasonable sounds. I like to set the colors now too. Open Manager. I feel like the monster controls should be red. Filters are usually green in Melder plugins, so be it. And I'd like orange for the character, just because I feel like it. I like to do the colors in the beginning because it also changes the list of multiparameters on the edit screen, making it easier to navigate. Save version 6. Time to check the easy screen. Well, not exactly a great user interface. It's colorful, yes, but that's about it. First thing to notice is that the tabs are somewhere below. To fix that, simply make the first multiparameter create a tab. Open the manager by Ctrl-Alt right-clicking on any of the parameters and selecting Manager. Double-click the first parameter and set the group to wobbling bass #wobbling. I intentionally use wobbling bass instead of generator because I feel like it. But now there are 4 tabs, so let's remove the generator tab created by the glide parameters. Good. Let me quickly make the first tab nicer without describing every step. It's not a GUI of the century, but it's clean and compact. Notice how I intentionally made the shape control wide? That's because if I touch it, the unit text may become very long, and that would cause problems if there wasn't enough space. Save version 7. A good practice now is to go to Settings, Style, and disable uppercase, just to check if I didn't mess up the names somehow. I should also check other styles, mainly titanium and aluminium. These are used by many users and quite different in character. I didn't really mess with panel types and any complex controls, so everything is fine as expected. Making things simple is often the key. Let me also compare it to the Supersaw instrument I'm going to load to slot B. When I double-click on the plugin title, it'll become as small as possible, hence easy to compare the two. Both are nearly the same in width, so everything is fine. Time for the Effects tab. First thing to do is to decide which effects are necessary and which are not. Feel free to include all of them, but the more there is, the more stuff MSoundFactory needs to load. So it's not just about making it easy for the users by including only necessary effects, but also about performance. Here I've decided that I don't need any of the modulation effects from flanger to tremolo. So first I select all of the multi-parameters in the manager and click Reset. They're gone, but not from the edit screen. So I need to go to Edit Screen, FX tab, and destroy the effects themselves. Simply hold Alt and click on all the modules. Save version 8. Also, I don't think I'm going to use the distortion effects here. These could actually be useful, but I want to destroy them for the sake of showing how, since here it is a little different. The distortion and lo-fi modules are actually per voice effects, so you wouldn't find them in the FX tab on Edit Screen. Anyways, again, let's destroy all of the multi-parameters using the manager. Now to the Edit Screen. There's the distortion in the FX tab. Kill it using the Alt key. Now to the Generator tab. And there's the magical modulator in the bottom, which contains stuff like distortion, amp, and wave folder. That's the one. Delete it. Version 9. All multi-parameters are done. It's time to make sure the instrument is fully compatible. The main thing is to make sure I didn't accidentally move any parameters from globals, since that would break the locking possibilities. I could do that manually just by comparing it to the Supersaw, but there's a very simple way to do it automatically. Open Manager, click Process Template, and select the MSoundFactory instrument template available from the website. A direct link is available in the video description. It reports lots of parameters it didn't find in the template, which is logical since these are the parameters I made myself, plus some stuff from the Effects tab, nothing to worry about. So everything's fine. Back to the easy screen. Next piece of the puzzle, the defaults. I already set default values for my new controls in the wobbling bass tab when creating those multi-parameters, but I didn't do anything to the predefined panels on that tab, nor for the effects. So now I should set the controls however I want them, and if I change them, set the default values as well. For instance, I think the global envelope sustain should be 0 decibels, so I drag it up to the maximum, open its multi-parameter by Ctrl-Alt-clicking on it, and click Set Current Value button. Now is the time to properly test the instrument. Play it, play with the parameters, try some more effects, use different MIDI controllers and so on. Tweak stuff on the way to make it perfect, both sound-wise and usability-wise. Happy with it? Good. Next task, set up the additional MIDI controllers. There's an infinite variety of MIDI controllers on the market, many coming with sliders and knobs the users can use to control the sounds somehow. Sure, they can manually set it all up, but we should make their lives easier by doing as much as possible for them. Main controllers are just for that. The customers will set up their controllers on the Main Controllers tab in the MIDI settings. You only need to attach some of them to import easy screen parameters using the first tab in MIDI settings. This way, whatever the controller the user has, it will always work. First, it's usually handy to use the volume controller to control the volume on the Globals tab. Control-Alt right-click on the volume, select Attach MIDI Controller. The MIDI window appears, assigns that parameter to the first empty slot, and enables learning, which we don't really need, so I disable it and select the volume controller manually. By the way, I can just load the MSoundFactory default preset instead, but I wanted to show you how it's done anyways. Now I need to pick some of the most important easy screen controls to be attached to the main controllers. We can assume main 1 is a modulation wheel, so which one could I assign to that? I could choose distortion. Control-Alt right-click on the distortion, select Attach MIDI Controller, disable learning, and select main 1. Next one, how about filter modulation? Main 2. Wobbling depth, main 3. Wobbling rate, main 4. Monster depth, main 5. Let's say that's enough. I should define at least 4, ideally 8, main controllers. Version 10. Next task, randomization. When you're on the easy screen and click the global random button, MSoundFactory will randomize all of the easy screen controls, unless the randomization is disabled for them. Globals tab controls have this already disabled. Some effects too. The rest is up to me. So for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to disable randomization for the envelope parameters. Let me load version 10. And all I need to do next is open the multiparameter editor for each control and disable randomizable switch. Save version 11, and try the randomization. Good, envelope stays intact. One final touch for real pros, you should include help for each control if it's not obvious, as it is for volume, for example. I'm going to do that only for one control, say, rate. Notice the question mark button that appeared here? Click it to test the help system. All fine. Version 12. I almost forgot. All instruments should be similar in loudness, right? It wouldn't be very convenient if one was really silent and another really loud. So how to do that? Easy. Click Set button in the plugin toolbar. It will play a simple performance in the background, measure the loudness, and set the gain parameter on the edit screen. Time to export my instrument. On the easy screen, select the first tab, since that's the way it should look when it's loaded. Make sure all multiparameters are at default values. Right-click on each if you're not sure. Then switch to the edit screen. Click Designer menu and select Export Device. First, a warning dialog appears, and you should definitely read what it has to say. I'll go ahead and click Yes. Now I need to enter the new instrument name, select a folder, in my case, Bass Wobble. I'll write some info about the instrument and myself. Finally, the categories. Let me select a few which I think are suitable. The last column of categories, called Features, needs some special care. I should support MPE because my new instrument supports MPE controllers. I'll also enable Full GUI because the instrument has everything it needs. All tabs, globals, etc. I'm also going to enable Editable because I want this to be an open instrument where everyone can look into the edit screen. If you wouldn't enable this, then even you wouldn't be able to get to the edit screen yourself. By the way, that's partly why I made presets on the way. I'm backing up my work just in case something unexpected happens. The editable flag is useful to protect your know-how, but disable it only if you're certain you want to do that. I'm also enabling low CPU. because this instrument takes little resources indeed. Finally, factory flag is useful when you're making content for MSoundFactory factory library. Now I'll go to the easy screen and quickly load a different instrument and then switch back to my new device just to check everything works as expected. Good. A little perk I can do now, add a banner to the top or left of the user interface just to make my device nicer. At this moment, it needs to be done manually. First, open the folder where the actual devices are, click the Designer menu button and select Open Device Folder in Explorer or Finder on OS X. Then locate my device. I can now simply place a JPEG or PNG file with the same name next to it. So let me place one in there. Now open my instrument and voila. And even better, I can use some of the predefined banners available from the root folder. Right now, I'm using the first version that implements this, so there is one. Perhaps at the time you're watching this, there are more of them. Anyways, to do that, I need to add a configuration XML file next to my instrument. Sounds complicated? Not really. First, let me copy the one available next to the supersaw instrument, supersaw.xml. Rename it, and that's all. To change which banner to use, open it in any text editor. I'll just use Notepad. And it's pretty obvious now, isn't it? Check the banner is there by reloading the instrument. Good. There is one final stage, instrument presets. It's extremely important to remember that once you start making presets for your instrument, you must not change the instrument edit screen anymore. Device presets only store the multiparameter values and index them by numbers. So if you would change the order of multiparameters, add new ones, etc., all presets may stop sounding the same way. But I think my instrument is finished, so it's okay. I'll quickly make a few presets, just some random tweaks, and click the set button to set the loudness in each, and switch between them to check it's working. That's it. I've just created a nice little instrument with everything that's needed. In the next video, I'll also show you how to make products, which are easy to install for the end users, can be shared online, and even sold with the possibility of trialing, including samples, etc. Thanks for watching. Good luck making your instruments, whether you're going to sell them yourself, do it for fun, or offer them to Melda Production to include them with MSoundFactory library.